Today, the big day, the celebration of Purim. We enjoy not only to hear the Megillah, but to see the huge attendance in my 11 years of service here in the capital city of Annapolis in Maryland. I can attest to the fact that it was the largest attendance ever between the Megillah reading, the costumes, the slideshow, the choir, the performance, the food. So many great people, wonderful volunteers that put together the unbelievable Purim program. Thank you very, very much. One fellow said to me that we should appreciate what we have, which is people from outside look up at us and said, look how beautiful is our religion, our faith, and this is something we should all cherish and look forward for many more celebrations. The subject of today, it's the page 145 in the Tractate Shabbat. I would like to begin with introduction from my mentor and teacher, Rabbi Shlomo Zalman Auerbach, one of his students, Rabbi Neuwirth, in the book called Shmirat Shabbat Kehilchata, chapter 5. Several halachot from that book which lead us to understand better the sugya of today. The sugya of today, it's first and foremost Hilchot Schita. If you need to squeeze a food on Shabbat, such as if you have a lemon, you want to add it to a salad. If you have a oil needed and you need to squeeze an olives. If you need to have a grape, can you squeeze the grapes in order to make a grape juice on Shabbat, etc. So let's first go to chapter 5 in Shmirat Shabbat Kehilchata, Dinei Schitat Perot B'Shabbat V'Yom Tov. I'm trying to translate the Hebrew writings in my very best. Schitat perot, squeezing fruits in order to have the liquid come out on Shabbat, and festival is forbidden. So, in other words, any fruit, you cannot put that fruit to an empty bowl, regardless if you use some utensils or you use your hand. And that included, in very general term, lemon, orange, carrot, etc. However, and listen carefully, we do allow to squeeze in our hands on food. מותר לסחוט ביד לתוך אוכל, כשידוע, when it's very clear, שרוב המיץ נסחט יספק בתוכו, which means that you take this lemon and it will penetrate to the food, או אם המיץ בא לתקן טעם האוכל, or in order for that liquid to repair or to ameliorate, to improve the level of the food. And here he added the Chazon Ish that said דבעינן שכל המיץ יהיה בלול באוכל, which means that it's a secondary to the food, while it's come in the food as part of the kdera, of the food itself. Example he used here, if you take the milk and you have a pot filled of bread and you add some milk, so he brought the Shulchan Aruch Harav that said, number one, בא לתקן את האוכל אפילו אינו נבלע בתוכו, that as long as he's come to improve the food, or אינו בא לתקן את האוכל אבל נבלע בתוך האוכל, even it's not improved the food but you don't see it, it's very small part of the food. So let's say you have a salad and you want to add a little lemon. So he said, you can do it, but there is some point we need to clear. Number one, ענבים in a grape, רצוי שלא לשחוט בשבת גם באופן זה. It's preferable, it's advisable not to do it on Shabbat, only if you do it for a little baby. In a festival, it's a different story, you can do it. But again, the advice, the guidance is that mitz yisafek betoch ha'ochel, that the liquid part will penetrate and be part of the food itself. ולכן, listen carefully, מותר לשחוט לימון על גבי סוכר. You can take a little sugar, as we mentioned in the previous session, and you take the lemon and you squeeze the lemon on that sugar. אבל אסור לשחוט לימון לתוך כלי ריק. However, do not take an empty bowl and squeeze the lemon to the empty bowl. גם אם בדעתו לערבב מיד את המיץ עם סוכר או גבינה. Even you intend to take this empty bowl and put it on the top of the salad. Don't do that. He says what you do is you take a little pot, you put sugar, and then you squeeze the lemon on that sugar, and then you can transfer it. So he said, V'yesh machmirim, but there are those who are more stringent, which is, he bring the Mishnah Brura and few others, the Taz, that שלא לשחוט לימון על סוכר. אם אמנם דעתו ליטל את הסוכר בתוך המים, that they shouldn't do that even on the sugar. So again, here we have to say that it's the way that I derive this Shmirat Shabbat in my best understanding is you can do it by force of circumstance, you can do it with a certain conditions, such as you need to feed a baby, such as you need to improve the quality of your food. But if you can, if there's any way you can do it before Shabbat, that's the best way to do it. Another point he mentioned here, מותר לשחוט לימון על סלט ועל דגים, אבל אסור לשחוט לימון לתוך כלי. So for example, if you have fish, let's say you have, like your wife, a Sephardic wife, and she made a beautiful, let's say, salmon with all these beautiful, tasty spices. And somehow she forgot to put some spices. And it's crucial for the taste. Otherwise it tastes too Ashkenazi, too sweet. So part of that is you have to take a lemon and squeeze it on the top of, and many restaurants serve like that. They give you a very basic piece of fish and they put aside a lemon. You can squeeze if you want as much as you like to. So in that sense, he said here that you can do it on the top of that fish. So he said, another example, לשחוט את החומץ ממלפון חמוץ כדי שהמלפון יהיה טעים יותר. You have a cucumber that turn to be pickles. You combine the cucumbers with some vinegar or wine, depends, and then in order to improve the brine or the taste, so you squeeze it. So he said, יעשנו סמוך לסעודה. If you do it in conjunction to upcoming meal, which is like part of the about to eat meal, then you can do it. But again, he said that all of that, the way that they understand his language is by force of circumstance. If you have to do it, you can do it with certain restrictions. But again, it's advisable, it's preferable if you can do before Shabbat in any form, or you set it up in a way that you show a good example to people who are not so religious or not so familiar with that, that will be the best, because unfortunately people who are not familiar can derive for things that it's absolutely forbidden. So therefore we have to be careful with that, how to do it. Again, in a very general term, has to be at the top of food. Later, at the very end of this shiur, we bring the practical halachot. But let's go to our sugiyah. We are on page 145. Amar Rabbi Zeira, Amar Avichia Bar Ashi, Amar Rav. So it's basically at the midst of the page, 20 lines from the top of the page. אמר רבי זרע, אמר רב חייא בר אשי, אמר רב, סוחט אדם אשכול של ענבים לתוך הגדרה ולא לתוך הקערה, ודאג לצירו אפילו לתוך הקערה. So he said that a person may squeeze a cluster of grapes into a pot with food in it on Shabbat, because liquid that is squeezed directly into food, it's considered food. That's exactly what we said, that you see how our contemporary derived from the text. However, one may not do so into a bowl that it's empty. Yativ Rav Dimi v'kamar le'ashmata. Now we talk about squeezing on the fish. Amar le'abai le'Rav Dimi, atun mishmei de Rav matnit v'lo kashelu, anan mishmei de Shmuel matnit alav v'kashela. So it's a two different school of thought, and let's see what they said. Because Rav Dimi, he learned from the people in Eretz Yisrael from the west, like Rabbi Yirmiyah. So he used to come to ascend to Babylon and to deliver what he learned in Eretz Yisrael. So that's the when he used the word atun or anan, atui, meaning the people in Babylon. So he said, Mi amar Shmuel dag leotzi tziro afilu letoch hakara. The Shmuel said that it's permitted to squeeze a fish for its brine even into a bowl. Ve'aitmar kvashin shesachatan. If you have a fresh vegetable, you take this fresh vegetable that it's not cooked, and what do? You combine them with the vinegar or with wine. So marav legufan mutar, lememehen patur aval asur. Rav said, wait, if you want to squeeze them because you need the vegetable themselves without the liquid, so fine, you can do it. Even lechatchila. But if you want the liquid, so you can exempt from bringing a sin offering, but it's prohibited. And we said many times, when it's come to Shabbat, there is a concept that it's called patur aval asur, that you exempt, but it's forbidden. Exempt meaning you exempt from bringing sin offering, which is biblical, excuse me, but it's still forbidden. So I would like to just elaborate in a few words what's involved here. There is one melacha that is called trashing, disha, that we discuss at length. There is a derivative of disha that it's called mefarek. For example, if you have let's say you have a barley, and you divided it two parts in order to eat it, then you divided it, you're trashing it. So that's called mefarek. But if you take this fruit and you squeeze them for the sake, Rashi said, of themselves, and not for the sake of the liquid that come out of that, then it's not considering a forbidden. Now, how about if you take olives and you squeeze them, or grapes? What's the purpose? So one way you can say that you like to eat, when you eat olives, you go to a store nowadays, you see 20 different type of olives or more. Some people like just the olives, some people like just the oil, and some people like both in different tastes. The same apply to grapes. Some people want the juice, some people want the fruit itself. So since most of the people use it, that's the Magen Avraham in Shin Kaf. Since most of the people use them for the purpose of their liquid, the rabbis put a boundary, and they said it's forbidden, even it's come naturally. And in that sense, if you have, let's say, pomegranates, so they said, if you want to make it sweeten, then the Pri Megadim and Eshel Avraham said you can do it. But again, we should remember that we divided between two entities. One, if you want to drink it, and the other one is if you want to eat it. If you want to drink it, it's not biblical. Why? Because the whole idea of trashing, disha, dash, and this derivative mefarek that you divided it to, it's only if the definition of dash, it's if it grows in that way. If the barley was growing that way and you divided the hay, one part from the other, then you involve with that type of derivative. Otherwise, it's not. The rabbis, however, came in, and because of all the issues that people misconstrue it, etc., they put boundaries. So now you see what they said here. Ushlakot. How about these vegetables that you cook them with the water? Bein legufan, bein lememehen, mutar. If you take a boiled vegetables, whether he need the vegetables themselves without the liquids, or you needed to squeeze the vegetable for their liquids, either way it's permitted to squeeze them on Shabbat. Shmuel, however, ושמואל אמר אחד כבשים ואחד שלקות לגופן מותר, לממיהם פטור אבל אסור. Shmuel said both pickled vegetable and boiled vegetable. If you squeeze them for the sake of vegetable themselves, it's fine, it's permitted. But if you squeeze them for the liquid, again, patur aval asur, is exempt from sin offering, but it's prohibited lechatchila. So, which means if you take fish and you squeeze it for the sake of its brine, so the it's under the category of squeezing boiled item for the liquid, which according to Shmuel is prohibited. So you see here two statements from Shmuel that one contradicted the others. Because in one place he allowed to squeeze the fish for its brine. Even he said earlier that is a rabbinic prohibition of squeezing some vegetables that it's combined with vinegar, for example. So Rav Dimi responds, Amar lei ha-Elokim. Ha-Elokim is a language of oath. It's like taking an oath. Einai ra'u velo zar. He quoting a sentence that said, it's from the book of Job, chapter 19, that said, it's like making an oath that I saw in my eyes, which means I received this tradition one after the other. Mipumei de Rabbi Yirmiyah shmi'a li. From the mouth of Rabbi Yirmiyah I heard that. ורבי ירמיה מרבי זרע, ורבי זרע מרב חייא בראשי, ורב חייא בראשי מרב. It's a lineage of rabbis that one after the other said it. That Rav allowed to squeeze the brine from the fish and not Shmuel. So it means that it's not a contradiction between two different ruling of Shmuel, since what you're saying is not Shmuel, it's Rav who said it. Now go back to the dispute. כבשים שסחטן, אמר רב לגופן מותר, לממיהם פטור אבל אסור. We learn that pickled vegetables that one squeeze, Rav said that for themselves it's fine. If you need the liquids, it's exempt from sin offering, but it's a rabbinic prohibition. Ushlakot. But if you take these vegetables that combine with vinegar, ben legufan, ben lememeh mutar, regardless if you want the vegetable to eat the vegetable themselves or you want the liquid that come out of vegetables, it's permissible. Ushmuel amar, echad ze ve'echad ze, regardless if it's a pickled or vegetables, regardless, legufan mutar lememeh patur aval asur. If you want to eat it, it's fine, but if you want the liquid that come out, is exempt from sin offering, but it's forbidden. Rabbi Yochanan amar, Rabbi Yochanan, this is the third opinion, and it's very important. He said, echad kvashim ve'echad shlakot, legufan mutar lememehen chayav chatat. Rabbi Yochanan says both pickles, vegetable, and boiled vegetable, if one squeeze the vegetable for themselves, is permitted. But if he squeezes them for the liquid, he is liable for sin offering, Why? Because it's a performance of something that is prohibited by the Torah law. So there is a very big machloket, disputation among the rabbis what exactly involved here in Rabbi Yochanan. For example, Rabbeinu Hananel hold that Rabbi Yochanan is much stringent, more than others, in regards to a liquid that come in contact with food. That it means even you squeeze a cluster grapes to a bowl, it's also part of that, part of the prohibited. But everyone disagree with him. So as far as the practical halacha, I just give the vignette. The Chazon Ish said in 55, and many others, they said that you allow even lechatchila as an issue to squeeze olives or grapes into a bowl, the way that Rav and Shmuel allow. But he said that the Rosh and Bet Yosef brought and Mishnah Brura and Shmirat Shabbat said that lechatchila, the way that it should be done is if someone is strict not to do all of that, tavo alav bracha, bless come upon him. So as we said at the very beginning stage of this shiur, we said that if someone can avoid all that together by preparing properly or avoid that, that's better, because it's a lot of details here and a person needs to be very knowledgeable in order to do it properly. Meitivei. Now the GEMARA asks a question regard to these three different school of thoughts. סוחטים כבשים בשבת לצורך השבת, אבל לא למוצאי שבת. This is important halacha because we said it all the times. If you need to do all of that, and you need to do squeeze pickled vegetable or anything, if you need it for the Shabbat is one thing, but you cannot do a preparation from Shabbat for something you need after Shabbat. וזיתים וענבים לא יסחוט ועם סחט חייב חטאת. But as far as the olives and clusters, grapes, you cannot squeeze in any form, and if you do it, you have, if it's unwittingly, you are liable for sin offering. So now you see from that you're allowed to squeeze any vegetable pickles that with the vinegar for the purpose of you need their liquid. So kasha l'Rav, kasha l'Shmuel, kasha l'Rabbi Yochanan. Because all these three, both Rav, Shmuel, and Rabbi Yochanan, each of them individually, what did they say? None of them allow lechatchila as an issue to do it. So Rav metaretz letamei. Now each of them have his own explanation. Rav said, Shmuel metaretz, and Shmuel responded, and Rabbi Yochanan letamei. רב לטעמי, סוחטים כבשים בשבת לצורך השבת, אבל לא למוצאי שבת. במה דברים אמורים? What exactly involved here? לגופן, אבל לממיהן פטור אבל אסור. If you need it for the sake of eating them, but not for the liquid that come out. ושלקות, however, if you need the boiled vegetable, בין לגופן, בין לממיהם מותר. Whether you squeeze them for themselves or you do it for their liquid, it's permitted. Meaning even לכתחילה. וזיתים וענבים לא יסחוט ועם סחטן חייב חטאת. And if you involve with olives or grapes, so wine may not squeeze them, but if you squeeze them, he is liable for sin offering. שמואל מתרץ לטעמי, סוחטים כבשים בשבת לצורך השבת, which means you do it for the Shabbat itself, but not for Motzei Shabbat. והוא הדין לשלקות. And the same apply for shlakot, for boiled vegetables. במה דברים אמורים? In what case is this statement said? When he does that, לגופן. You do it for its liquid. So you're liable to bring sin offering. אבל למימיהן. But if he needs the liquid, so he said, patur aval asur. He is patur, he is exempt, but it's prohibited. וזיתים וענבים לא יסחוט ועם סחט חייב חטאת. But olives and grapes, one may not squeeze them at all, and if one squeezes them unwittingly, he is liable for sin offering. Rabbi Yochanan interpreted this braita according to his line of reasoning. סוחטים כבשים לצורך השבת, אבל לא למוצאי שבת, אחד כבשים ואחד שלקות, מה דברים אומרים לגופם ולצורך מהם לא יסחוטים, וסחט נעשה כמי שסחט זיתים ענבים וחייב חטאת. So Rabbi Yochanan said basically the same, the only difference is he said that if a person squeezed them, so he become like one who squeezed olive and grapes and liable to bring a sin offering. אמר רב חייא ברש"י אמר רב, דבר תורה אינו חייב אלא על דריסת זיתים וענבים בלבד. By the Torah law, one is only liable for stomping an olive and grapes, but all the other prohibition, if squeezing, etc., etc., it's a rabbinic decree. Now you have here two schools of thoughts. You have the Rashi and you have the Tosfot. Rashi hold that that squeezing on Shabbat is not considering a labor. Tosfot have a very different school of thought. So I wish to have more time, but basically Tosfot divided here between the two different type of doing this type of squeezing olives and squeezing grapes. וכן תני דבי מנשה, דבר תורה אינו חייב, אלא על דריסת זיתים וענבים בלבד. So the דבי מנשה, they say that according to the Torah is only if one squeeze only a stomping an olive or a grape. Other than that, not. So basically that's different than what Rabbi Yochanan said earlier. So you have here Rashi. Rashi used the word here klomar, and Rashi said that asrat Torah melacha v'dusad din le'levav melacha, aval shar drichot le'avor chayu be'ach v'le'av melacha ninu. So Rashi here explained the definition of melacha. In my book, Be'orei klomar b'Rashi al Hashas, I elaborate on this Rashi, and for sure others like the Rosh, the Rashba, and the Rif. You give me a signals of time, so I cannot go to that, but I urge you to read in my book. I elaborate on different opinion between Rif, Rosh, Rashba, and Rashi, and Tosfot here, what's involved in the difference between using the olives and grapes and others. And now we're going to a different direction that the Vei Menashe said, Ve'en ed mipi ed kasher. Here we're dealing with different situation, that testimony of one witness based solely that he learned from the mouth of another witness, which in our language is called hearsay evidence, which means you have a situation that someone said something and it's not something that you can take to consideration because just one person said. So only in the rare occasions which soon we see it, like for example missing in actions, and woman is in a state of a deserted situation, that she's in a limbo, she doesn't know what to do and how to do, and we need to free her. Then you can go and take seriously to consideration one person who witnessed over something. But other than that, it's not sufficient. We just turned the page 145b. Ela le'edut isha bilvad. If it's a situation that a woman husband has died or is missing in action, and now she's in a state of crisis. For example, she wants to marry and have children to someone else, she wants to be free, etc., and she's stuck. So here you cannot go in a stringent way, you have to be lenient, which is even one person claim that he or even she saw the body running in a river, part of the body, which the Talmud in several places refer to, we accepted that. So in other words, in order to free the aguna, the deserted wife, or the wife that she's really in a state of agony for missing her husband, So it's enough that someone heard from someone else that their husband died. It's enough for the Bet Din, for the rabbinical court, to accept that and allow her to go ahead and marry. So that's the simple way to understand it. But you should know that Rashi here used the term Mishum Iguna. We want to free her from that state of crisis. So for the sake of freeing women, the rabbis are much more lenient. So even in a usual court case is a hearsay evidence that Mr. A or Mrs. B heard from Mrs. C, etc. So it's not sufficient in a regular case. Here we're accepting that. So since we're talking about hearsay, like Mr. A said to Mr. B, who comes and Mr. C and tells us something, we have the obligation to bring the firstborn of animal. So if someone said that this is the firstborn, and he heard it from someone else who tell him about that animal, and so what happened? Sometimes those animals have a blemish. So the question is, how you treated that animal? Do you trusted someone that said something from someone else? It's called ed mipi ed, or not? Usually by the Torah law, it's not sufficient. Some cases the rabbis are more lenient. So if you have, for example, a firstborn for the kosher, for the pure animal, so basically you need to bring it to the Kohen, to the priest, and the Kohen brings a sacrificial offering in a temple. So then after doing all this ritual, the Kohen can go ahead and eat from that meat in Jerusalem. But if that animal carries some type of blemish, regardless if it happens after the delivery or before the delivery, we allow to eat it as a chulin, as a non-consecrated animal, and it's part of what belongs to the Kohen. In our times, we don't have the altar, so the Kohen need to take care of that until he has this type of blemish, and then he can eat it. So all of that apply if it happened naturally, but we're not allowed to go ahead and cause a blemish to that animal. So and if you do that, the sages put a strong fine, and they said you cannot eat it. So unfortunately, in the past, it was Kohanim that wasn't reliable people, and they used to do it on purpose to carry a blemish on the firstborn. So, and therefore they said, oh, that happened naturally. So therefore we are suspicious over any witnesses that said that this firstborn happened by itself. He needs to bring a witness. But the problem is that many times it's a witness from a witness, and the question is, you take it as a hearsay or not. So it's a controversy, it's a dispute. Rav Ami Asir, Rav Asi Shari. One rabbi forbade it, and one rabbi allowed it. Amar Rav Ami Rav Asi, they argue over that. Only when you need to free a aguna, a woman that is deserted, you can take witness from a witness and you can free her. But other than that, how you do that? So he said, that applied to a witness that the woman is reliable, which means that only the few situations that the sages trusted. Here we're talking about freeing a person. It's really a future life of a person. It's a future of a generation, potentially. Those of you remember the story of the submarine Dakar. Israel has, at the early years, a submarine that was missing in action. And the rabbis wasn't sure if there's a still chance for them to return home or not. And it was years that took the rabbis to free them. Meanwhile, some of those women that was agunot lost the opportunity to have children, because it wasn't clear if the husband's coming back or not. So since it's that state of crisis, the rabbis has a very different attitude to accepting witness from witness, even so far away from reliability in a regular case. רב יימר הכשר עד מפי עד לבחור. It was a situation of a rabbi by the name of Rav Yeima that he permitted a witness that it's a like hearsay testimony of the firstborn, slaughter of the firstborn animal that developed the blemish. Kare ale Mareimar Kolim Yeimar Share Buchra. It's like derogatory statement. He said Yeimar who permits the firstborn. That he said because he all that this type of thing it's invalid. It's something that we shouldn't do it. Vehilcheta, but however the final halacha is ed mipi ed kasher livchor. That hearsay testimony is valid with regard to a firstborn animal. Mishnah. Chalot dvash. We now speaking in a Mishnah that said that if someone take a chalot dvash, it's a honeycomb. So the honeycomb that flows its own from honeycomb is permitted on Shabbat. So Rashi here tells us that if you look at the Rashi, it said that when he's taking it from the kaveret, so he hold that chalot dvash is. Wait, let me find the Rashi here. Okay, so he said that Rabbi Eliezer allowed to eat it. Ki ata Rav Hoshaya min hardea, ata ve'atei matnita beyadei. So when Rav Hoshaya min hardea came, and he brought the matnita beyadei that he's learning. Zeitim ve'anavim sheriskan le'erev Shabbat. If you have grapes and olives that one crushed them before Shabbat, ve'yatz'u me'atzmam, and the juices seeped out of the on Shabbat, so they said asurim. The juices are prohibited for use on Shabbat. Rabbi Elazar and Rabbi Shimon matirin. Rabbi Elazar and Rabbi Shimon permit using them. So when Rav Yosef heard that, he said, Amar Rav Yosef, Gavra Yeteira Ata La'ashmuinan. So Rav Hoshaya come and teach us that that is another person beside Rabbi Shimon, excluding Rabbi Elazar, that allow liquids that come out of crushed fruits. What we learn from this Braita that it's not clear in the Mishnah. So Rashi here used the word klomar, and again I urge you to really, it's most of the yeshivas library have it in the library. In my book, in explanation of Rashi, I try to explain what exactly bothered Rashi here, why he used the word klomar, but basically it's the idea that it can take it as a statement, and Rashi wants to say that it's a question here, because the Braita talk about olives and grapes, and the Mishnah talk about honeycombs. And the question is, what exactly Rav Hoshaya came to teach us, more than saying that it's that Rabbi Shimon goes by the way that Rabbi Elazar said. So Abaye responds, Amar le Abaye, Tuva kamash melan. He teaches a lot. What? He said, Hatam, who here in the honeycomb that he crushed them, Rabbi Elazar allowed to eat the honey that came out of a honeycomb, the meikara uchla ulvesof uchla, because it's initially it was a food and ultimately it remained food. So therefore, the honey that sipped is a food rather than the liquid. Avalacha, but here in regards to olives and grapes, when he crushed them, the meikara uchla ulvasof mashke, which means initially they were food and ultimately become a liquid. So he said, Eima lo. Maybe you say that it's not permitted even according to Rabbi Elazar. Kamash melan. So therefore Rabbi Yoshua teach us that this braita, that Rabbi Elazar and Rabbi Shimon allowed a liquid that came out of olives and grapes that was crushed, is Rabbi Elazar rules in much more leniency, and the whole idea of mefarek, that is part of threshing, it's when the essence change, but therefore the honeycomb, it's not a biblical in any form. But here we have a very important Rishonim and Achronim. It's a lot of discussion what exactly involved in honeycomb, and I urge you later at the final practical halacha to hear what's the final halacha, the Magen Avraham and others, what they said in regard to that liquid that came out of the honeycomb. Mishna tells us, Kol sheba b'chamin me'erev Shabbat, shorin oto b'Shabbat. Any salted food item that was already placed in hot water, meaning that was cooked before Shabbat, one may soak it in hot water even on Shabbat. Which means this is not a direct food that on a fire, and it's basically it's the process. It's Rashi used the word klomar shenit bashel, and you hear it from me again, that what I explained at length, the whole concept of bishul achar bishul, in very, very short, there is a concept that is called kli rishon. The first one is kli sheni, the second one, and here when you lishrot tavshil, if you put this cooked food in advance, so we don't talk about direct to the fire, but indirect. So you allow, since it's not mevashel, it's not direct cooking, you allow when it's softened. V'chol shelo ba bechamin be'erev Shabbat. For example, if you have a dry meat, that sometimes if you're hungry and you have nothing else, so you eat it, medichin oto bechamin beShabbat, you can use the rinse in hot water on Shabbat. But he said, chutz min hamaliach hayashan, except for the old salted fish, and some said v'dagim meluchim ktanim, and small salted fish, v'kulyasa ispanin, that's a tuna fish from Spain. It's that's the name, that you cannot even use it for hot because it's bishul, it's cooking, that because it's extremely salty, and shadachatan zu igmar melachtan, that the minutes that you rinse them with hot water, you complete the prohibited labor of cooking. So therefore you cannot use it. It's called mevashel. So the rabbi said, B'u halacha and others, that even the cold, you cannot do that, not just with hot. Now the Gemara said, Kegon mai, give me an example, what case will soaking it in hot water is required that after it was already done. Amar Rav Safra kegon tarnegolta de Rabbi Abba, chicken in Rabbi Abba, which is he needed for the medical purposes. Amar Rav Safra zimna chada iklait leatam. One time I was in Eretz Israel, ve'ochlan minei, they gave me that food. Ve'ilo Rabbi Abba de Ashken Charma batratat tarfei itnesi. That if he doesn't give me this great rabbi, this wine that it's 3 years old, I need to throw up because it was so disgusting. Rabbi Yochanan, when Rabbi Yochanan that came from the west, from Eretz Israel, Rayek mikrutach dibavlai, he used to spit up when he remembered this food from Babylon, that it was so disgusting in his the way that it was tasted. Amar Rav Yosef, Veliruk Ana, but we also, people of Babylon, also can spit when we remember the Tarnegulta de Rabbi Abba, that people in the West used to eat this type of chicken. You see that it's also a cultural difference and a taste difference. Nowadays, you have Ashkenazim that love the spicy Sephardic food and vice versa. It's like, I always wondering, you go to a new Jewish neighborhood in this country, and it's always a Chinese restaurant, a Chinese kosher restaurant. So one time I heard a comedian that said, I'm wondering, how come in every new Jewish place you have a Chinese restaurant, but I never heard any Chinese person that said, I miss my gefilte fish. Ve'od, another thing, they said, Amar of Gaza, Zimna Chada Iklait Leatam. One time I was in Eretz Israel, Ve'avdich Kuchai de Bavlai, and I prepared this kutach, this food, like the people in Babylon, She'ilu Minei Kol Brichei Ma'arava, that all the 6 people of the West, which is the Eretz Israel, asked me for it. So apparently not everyone in Eretz Israel found it disgusting. Some yes, some not, but it's also Rashi said it's mainly for the medical purposes. Then the Mishnah said, Kol shelo b'chamin be'erev Shabbat, medichim oto b'chamin b'Shabbat. Anything that was not cooked in hot water before Shabbat, one may rinse it in hot water on Shabbat, except for salted fish, etc. So now the Gemara asks, Hediach mai. So what's the halacha if one in shogeg and unwittingly rinse it? So Amar Rav Yosef, Hediach chayav chatat. He said is liable for sin offering. Amar Rav Brei de Ravina afanan na meitanina chutz b'maleach yashan v'kulias ha'ispanin sha'adachatan zo yigmar melachtan shma mina. So we learn that rinsing itself is completion of the prohibited labor of cooking, and that's the way we learn that the person is he violated the biblical precept and is therefore liable for sin offering if it was unwittingly. Yativ Rabbi Chia bar Rabba v'Rabbi Asi kamed Rabbi Yochanan v'yativ Rabbi Yochanan v'kam menamnem. So he was little nap, almost nap. V'amar le Rabbi Chia, so Rabbi Yochanan was overheard what they're discussing. Amar le Rabbi Chia bar Rabba Rabbi Asi mipnei ma'ofot shebavel shmenim. He asked him why the fall in Babylon are fatter than those in Eretz Israel. So Amar le, so he responds to him and he says, Kelach, it's not true. Lemidbar Aza, you go to the Gaza Strip in the early land, V'arecha shmenim hem, and I will show you fall that is even fatter than the one in Eretz Israel. So he asked him, Mipnei ma moadim shebavel smechim, why the people in Babylon are much happier in the festivals than people in Israel? So he said, Mipnei shehen aniyim, because people in Babylon are poor. So all the year round they don't have any joy of eating food. And they are all the time workaholics. They're working very hard. So therefore all the joy is saved only for the festivals. Then he asked, Mipnei ma talmidei chachamim shebavel metzuyanim, why that the people in Babylon wearing such a gorgeous, beautiful clothing? She said, Lefi she'enam bnei Torah. He says, because they are not really people of Torah, so they need to show off their beautiful clothing to show that they are important to impress people. So the people think that they are important because they dress so beautifully externally, and the people sometimes look at the package, at the cover of the book, and not the book itself. Mipnei ma'ovdei kochavim mezohamim. So he asked why the people who worship idols, so they're ethically contaminated. He said, Mipnei she'ochlin shkatzim urematzim. He says because they eat abominable creatures and crawling things that cause the bad character traits, because they believe that the influence of eating this type of food, it's contaminated their souls. Maharal explained it at length, that the connection between the food and the soul of a person, like they became part of their character since they're eating that type of food. They use the word of Dei Kochavim, idolaters. So Rabbi Yochanan woke up. Itarbu Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Yochanan woke up due to their discussion, and he said to them, "What's wrong with you guys?" Amarlu dardekei. You are like children. Lo kach amarti lachem. That's not what I taught you. Emor lachochma achoti ad. What they said in the Proverbs. Say to wisdom, you are my sisters, and call understanding your kin, means אם ברור לך כאחותך שאסורה לך אומרהו, ואם לאו לא אומרהו. If it's clear to you, the same as you are forbidden to your sister, which is a biblical strong precept, speak up, otherwise don't say something like that. אמרו לי, ולמה לאמר לאיזה מהם? Please respond and teach us which area we are incorrect. So he said, מפני מעופות שבבל שמנים, מפני שלא גלו. He says the reason that they fall in Babylon are fatter, it's because it's not went to exile like those falls from the Eretz Yisrael שנאמר, because they said in Jeremiah 48, שענן מואב מנעוריו ושוקטו על שמריו. Moab has been at ease since its youth, and he settled on his lease, and he was not emptied from vessel to vessel, and did not go into captivity. So therefore it means that the exile changed the pattern of this fall. So those that fall, that exile, there is not pattern the same as Babylon. So from where do you derive that even the animals and birds were exiled? Because you said only the nation of Israel exiled. תניא רבי יהודה אומר 52 שנה לא עבר איש ביהודה. It was 52 years of the exile of the first temple. So they said that not one person that until the Koresh, the Cyrus, the Persian king, allowed them to return to Eretz Yisrael and build the Beit HaMikdash. It was 52 years that King Tzidkiyahu, in the time of King Tzidkiyahu, the exile. So the building of the temple take 18 years. So it's altogether 70 years. So it means that these 52 years, Rashi said, no person passed by this land of Judah. And then some of the people returned. Shenemar, they said there in the book of Jeremiah chapter 9, Ale'arim, for the destruction on top of the mountain, Esav chivanei, I cry, me'of hashamayim ve'ad behema, from the heaven, the birds on the heaven to the beast, nadedu halachu, all they have fled and gone. So behema begimatria 50 v'tarten avu. The word behema has numerical value of 52, alluding to the fact that no one passed to 52 years there. אמר רבי יעקב, אמר רבי יוחנן, כולן חזרו חוץ מקוליאס ההספנים. Rabbi Yaakov said in the name of Rabbi Yochanan, all these birds, all the fowls and even the fish return after the 52 years, which is a very mystical statement, because here you don't talk in exile of people, you talk in exile of their animals. Anyway, excluding this kuliasa hispanim, this Spanish fish, he said that the Babylon, those inclined of Babylon, returned to water through the underground water course to the spring of Eitan in Eretz Yisrael, and the fish also returned through these water courses. And then he said, Keivan v'hai, Keivan de lo sharir shidrei, and kuliasa hispanin, because its spine is not strong, lo matzei salik, it could not ascend these water courses and not return to Eretz Yisrael. That's very esoteric, mystical statement. But it's fascinating. You see how the animals of people connected to them in that sense, that they cry together with them and go to exile with them as part of their belonging. מפני מה המועדים שבבבל שמחים. Remember, we asked a question, what's the reason that the festivals in Babylon are more joyous than Eretz Yisrael? He said, מפני שלא היו באותה כללה. Because the people in Babylon were not part of that curse that said that the festival will be reduce dichtiv, that they said in book of Hosea, chapter 2, that during the time of the temple destruction, Vishbati kol mesuzah chagav chodsha v'shabta v'chol moada, that I will cause all the happiness to cease, her festival, new moon, and her Shabbat, and all her festivals. So you see, Uchtiv, and it said in Yeshayahu, in Isaiah, the first chapter, chodshechem u'moadechem san'a nafshei ula latoach. And they said, my soul, meaning in a sense that he talked on behalf of God, that my soul hates your new moon, and your festivals, they are burden to me. That's the anthropomorphic way of speaking of God, that I am worried to bear them. So that's applied to specifically people over there that live in Eretz Israel. But that's not part of, the people in Babylon are not part of that curse. Maya yuay ala toach. What does that mean? They are burden to me. Amar Rabbi Lazar, Amar Kadosh Baruch Hu, that in a way that God said, לא דיין לישראל שחוטאים עליי שמרחים אותי לידע איזו גזירה קשה אביא עליהם. Which means that it's they fulfill, the nation of Israel fulfill the festivals, but they fulfill the festival in order to have the joy of the lust, etc., the desire, to fulfill the desire, not because of serving God. So therefore, he says that it means that they are burdened on me. It's not enough for me, the Jewish people, that they sin before me, but they also burden me to know which harsh decree I will bring upon them. אמר רבי יצחק, אין לך כל רגל ורגל שלא באת בולשת לציפורי. In every festival it was that the governments came to the city of the Jews in Tzipori in order to create harm to them. ואמר רבי חנינא, אין לך כל רגל ורגל שלא בא לטבריה. The same applied to Tiberius. הגמון וקמטון ובעל זמורה. It was different taxes and police and people that gave a hard time disrupting the celebration of the festival. The third question, Rabbi Yochanan said, "B'pnei ma תלמידי חכמים שבבל מצוינים." Why do people Torah scholar in Babylon have a very distinguished the way that they appear? He says, "B'pnei לפי שאינם בני מקומן." In order for people to honor them, they need to dress beautifully. So that's not the place of dwelling. So they need always to dress in such a dignified way, so people who are not familiar with the Torah world will respect them. In my place, it's enough for people to know my name and they recognize who am I. But if not in my city, in my place, people need to recognize me by the way I appear externally, by my dress. Now is a proof to that, because they said in Isaiah 27, Haba'im yashresh Yaakov yatzitzu farach Yisrael. So said in the days to come, Jacob will take root, Israel will bud and blossom. Tane Rav Yosef said, taught אלו תלמידי בחכמים שבבבל שעושים ציצים ופרחים לתורה. This is a Torah scholar in Babylon that they buds and blossoms to the Torah, because they tell us that they such a great scholars, which means that they go out in exile and spread the teaching of the Torah. And then the fourth question, the last one, why the idolaters are ethically contaminated? Because they are not part of what we believe, the revelation in Sinai, that did not stand in Mount Sinai to receive the Torah. So he said, and he explained, Shebesha'a, at the time, Sheba Nachash al Chava, 146a, Ve'etil Bazoama. We believe that at the time, the earlier time, the snake came upon Eve, which means he seduced her and ate with her in a tree of knowledge. That's the famous biblical story in Genesis. Hishiani, some say that it was a sexual relations between the ancient snake and Eve. So he said that contaminated the future generation by that forbidden sexual relations. So therefore, Yisrael she'amdu al Har Sinai paska zo'amatam. So the big miracle happened upon revelation of Sinai, that the Jewish people stand there, that contamination were removed from them. Because it was all the people who have a blemish, the Torah said that it's come out of them. However, idolaters, עובדי כוכבים, שלא עמדו על הר סיני, לא פסקה זו אמתם. Those idolaters that didn't come to accept the yoke of Torah and were part of the revelation on Sinai, they still carry that contamination of the ancient snake that have a forbidden relation with Eve. אמר לרב אחא ברדרבה לרבה שגרים, מאי? So how about people who are convert to Judaism? He said, אמר לאף על גב דאינו לא אהבו, מזלי אוהבו. That he said that this is very mystical statement. He says even their physically wasn't there, but their mazal in the best way is to say that their future, their luck, or they it's like the correlation in our language, a angel of a person's, that emissary in a heavenly court, like the mitzvot that person said, it's the emissary in the heavenly court, that their soul was there because Hashem sees what future hold, and therefore they are part of that entities. Dichtiv, because what they said, what Moshe Rabbeinu make the covenant, they said in Deuteronomy 29, 7:30, Et asher shno po imanu omed hayom lifnei Hashem Elokeinu v'et asher anenu po. That Moshe Rabbeinu not talk only about people was there, but he's also speaking about the future souls that wasn't born yet. So that's apply also to people who became part of Jewish destiny. ופליגה דרבי אבא בר כהנא, דאמר רבי אבא בר כהנא, עד 3 דורות ופסקה זוהמה מאבותינו, until 3 generations that bad contamination didn't stop, because אברהם הוליד את ישמעאל, יצחק הוליד את עשיו, Abraham begot Ishmael, Yitzchak begot Esau, and then he said Yaakov, the 3rd generation, הוליד 12 שבטים שלא היה בהם שום דופי. And then only Yaakov, Avinu, only Jacob, the 3rd generation, he has the 12 righteous sons, that it doesn't carry this contamination from the ancient snake with the Eve. But again, the best way to understand that, I think the Maharal elaborate a lot of that, and several rabbis that are dealing with the mystical part explain it better, but we're just dealing so far with the pshat, the literal understanding of the GEMARA. Now let's go to a practical halachot.
Time, Kare